Welcome back to Triathlon Training Explained, powered by TrainingPeaks. This week, we are looking at heart rate monitors. Heart rate tracking was first developed as an objective measure in sport back in the 1970s in order to help athletes and coaches record and analyse their training and racing efforts. And obviously, technology has advanced a long way since then, and we now see heart rate wearables commonplace in both high-level sport and physical activity.
Yeah, but if you're new to monitoring and training with heart rate, well, it can all be quite daunting in the start. So today, we're here to help. We're going to break it all down for you. And to start off with, we're going to be actually helping you to choose a heart rate monitor, and then also actually looking into how you can train with heart rate and the benefits behind it.
Heart rate is a general indicator as to how hard you're working, as the more oxygen and energy your muscles require, the faster your heart's going to have to beat in order to pump that blood from your lungs to your muscles and back again.
Yeah, and by using a heart rate monitor and a watch, you can just quickly glance at your wrist to see your current heart rate, giving you, well, a real-time heart rate as to whether you need to be working harder or perhaps even back off.
Let's quickly look at how heart rate is measured. Now, in the clinical setting, they use an electrocardiograph, also known as an ECG, and this is the most accurate method as it generates patterns from the electrical activity in the heart, measuring that time between the two R waves, and it gives instantaneous feedback and actually shows even the smallest of changes in the heartbeat, and it's then displayed by beats per minute.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, if we remember back to school, we were taught how to read our pulse, and we were told to use our two fingers on either our wrist or our neck and count to either 6 or 10 and then multiply that by either 10 or 6, and that would give us our beats per minute, or BPM for short. And this is basically counting on the pressure change within our arteries as our heart pumps blood around our body, which, well, that's not going to be quite as accurate as ECG method.
Yeah, well, that then brings us to the devices on the market. And basically, you can either measure the ECG, which is the more accurate of the two, using something like a chest strap, or the other option is to measure it, that change in pressure that you talked about, and you can use an optical heart rate measure for that, which you can either wear on your wrist, arm, or even on your leg.
Now, you don't actually need to switch these on or off. They just automatically detect a heart rate, and when they're synced with a device, they activate themselves. And once you have actually synced them and paired them for the first time, that's it. You don't need to do it again, because it will just pair and sync every other time after that for any other activity. And also, you can pair these with bike computers, also other devices such as your iPhone, iPad, laptop, and then utilize other training platforms such as Zwift.
Yeah, but some people might find the chest strap a little bit restrictive. Sometimes it can rub, and for some activities it might not stay in place. And this is where the optical option comes in handy, and that, like we touched on earlier, measures or detects that change in pressure through your blood vessels. And that is basically what the heart rate watch does. So it'll have a sensor on the back of the wrist here, which actually uses LED lights to detect that change in pressure. If you are opting for a heart rate based wristwatch, then it's important you do place it on the correct part of your wrist. So you want it just away from the bony bit, and it needs to be sitting flat and tight enough that it can detect those changes, but not so tight that it's going to be restricting blood flow. And then the other option is an optical sensor like this OH1 from Polar, which you can actually wear on your upper arm. You can even wear it on your leg, and then this can be used just the same as a chest strap to link it up to your phone, your watch, your bike computer, or even your laptop.
Once you've found and chosen your preferred method of heart rate measurement, and then it's a case of learning how to use and optimize all this feedback that you're now receiving. Now, if you are new to all this heart rate measurement stuff, then it's likely that you've been working by pace or perceived effort of exertion before, or maybe both. Now, we're not saying that heart rate comes in place of that. Actually, they can really complement each other. And actually, over time, you'll start to learn what your normal heart rate is for different intensity levels and effort levels and paces. And the ultimate aim is to increase your pace whilst keeping your heart rate at the same level.
Yeah, but measuring heart rate or using it as a training tool does have a couple of limiting factors. As unlike pace or running to effort, which change automatically, heart rate does take a little longer to catch up, and this is known as the heart rate lag. For example, as you increase your pace, your heart rate's going to take a little bit longer to increase and get there. So if you're doing short intervals, then you probably want to stick to using perceived effort, pace, or even power if you have that available. However, once you've become used to using heart rate, it's a good idea to determine your heart rate zones, because you can then use these really effectively in your training and even in your racing.
Okay, well, for all of this, you will need to do a fitness test to find out your lactate threshold heart rate. And I'm afraid to say it is different and specific to both cycling and running, meaning you will have to do 2 separate fitness tests. Now, if you would like a little bit more information on how to find that out and how to use them, then you can see our How to Run Using Heart Rate Zones video. And you can do that by clicking on the link in the description below, or you can wait until the end of this video. Now, if you do already have your lactate threshold heart rate, then you can use that number or those numbers to then calculate your zones. On screen right now, you can see that percentage of the lactate threshold heart rate for each zone specific to running. And now we have the same, but for cycling. There is a slight difference, so don't just use the same heart rates. And once you've calculated those heart rate zones, you can then start to work and train more effectively by sticking to certain effort levels for reps within a session or for a whole session. And then if you're using something like TrainingPeaks and you upload your session after your workout, it will then tell you how long you've been working in those certain zones for. And if you like, you can set that to automatically update your heart rate zones as your fitness changes.
And on the Polar Watch, for example, you can actually set your screen so that it purely shows your heart rate zone, which makes it really easy to just glance down at it and know that you're running at that correct intensity. And if, say, you're prescribed a session that is sticking to one zone, but you're doing it over a hilly terrain, then you don't need to actually worry about the pace of that, because obviously you will slow down on hills, but it'll show that you're in the right zone if you're slowing down the hills, and you'll just need to increase a little bit when you're going back down the hill.
Now, we've already touched on this lag in heart rate, but it's worth being aware of other factors that can alter and affect your heart rate. So dehydration is one. When we're dehydrated, that makes our heart work harder and therefore beat faster. Alcohol has a similar effect, partly due to dehydration though. And then of course we've got stimulants such as caffeine that will raise our heart rate, as does stress.
On top of that, if you're racing or training in hot conditions, then that's obviously going to raise your heart rate. And then the cold can also affect it. But the final factor is one that surprises quite a few people, and that's fatigue, as it will actually raise your resting heart rate, but you'll find it harder to get your heart rate high when you're putting in the efforts. So a great way to monitor that is actually using your resting heart rate in the morning or heart rate variability. But we've got more on that in a video which we'll have a link for at the end of this.
Yeah, well, in short, using heart rate is a fantastic tool, and I'll be very honest here, it's something that I didn't actually use enough when I was racing professionally, but I really do realise the benefits behind it now. Now, if you do like today's video, then please hit that thumb up button, and if you'd like to see more from GTN, then please do just click on the globe and subscribe. Yeah,
and if you live in the Northern Hemisphere and it's still a bit chilly, these jackets are pretty cosy. So if you want to get your hands on one of those, just click on the link to the shop. And that heart rate variability video I talked about is just here.
And if you'd like to see how to use zones in running, then just click down here.